everybody, and welcome back to 428 Shibuya Scramble. We are kicking off right where we left off. I'm guessing since I already got the one bad ending, it doesn't matter, so I will act like the intelligent person here. Familiar cafe by the station was a natural choice. He quickly described the location. Okay, Toyama said. Cafe Electronics. Got it. I'll see you there. He hung up, and Minorikawa quickly gathered his belongings. Chiaki, how's the copy coming? Can I skip this? Fuck. Well, almost done. Just a little more, I think. Alright, bring your computer and come with me. Read over what you have so far. You're ready to head to the cafe. Do head into the office, however. Someone... Save. Okay, maybe... Yeah! Proofread delay. I think. Sure. Head to the cafe where Toyama would be headed. Great. They reached Cafe Le Trek without incident, and Minorikawa promptly spotted the publisher. Over here! Toyama hissed, eyeing his surroundings with obvious unease. Anna sat by his side, sullenly sipping on some juice. Waitress came over as Minorikawa joined them. May I take your order? She asked. Water. Just water, sir? Fine, make it a double. Exasperated, the waitress headed back to the kitchen. Toyama looked over at Katayama. Who's this guy? I'm Koichiro Katayama from Cho Nippon Printing. Katayama presented his business card. Toyama turned to Minorikawa with a quizzical look. What's someone from the printer doing with you? I'll explain later. There's no time for that right now, Minorikawa replied. First, I need you to answer some questions. Does the name Kenji Osawa ring any bells? Osawa? Toyama closed his eyes and thought. He heads up a laboratory at Okoshi Pharmaceutical. He heads up a laboratory at Okoshi Pharmaceutical. You ran a piece on him in the first ever issue of 4 Sergeant Ogata. Toyama's face lit up with recognition. Ah, yes, the political marriage piece. Yeah, that one. Do you remember the details from that article? Of course! Who do you think I am? Toyama puffed himself up proudly. I used to be local news copy editor for the Central Times. I got the details for all the stuff I've ever covered in my head. In that case, do you know who Kenji Osawa's wife was dating before they got married? Toyama blinked his eyes vacantly. Hey, what's the matter? Minorikawa asked. This is a pretty tough pop quiz you're giving me. Surprise, kids! It's time for a science pop quiz. What colorless, odorless gas, lighter than air, and used for consumer and municipal gas applications is also known as marsh gas or swamp gas? Helium, ethylene, propane, or methane? Marsh gas or swamp gas? I was originally going to say helium because of the lighter than air thing, but as a municipal gas application. Oh, goodness. Okay, so it's not helium, because I've never heard helium be described as marsh gas or swamp gas. I kind of want to go with propane because of the municipal gas applications, but, because it's the only one that I really know of or hear about, like, all the time. Methane is just shit, isn't it? It's basically shit. I'm gonna say ethylene. I'm gonna say ethylene. Tune in next time for the answer. Cut the crap, man. You just said you had all the details inside your head. Oh, they're in there alright. They're just not coming out. Minorikawa slumped. Mr. Toyama, please. Whether or not you'll be able to pay off your debts depends on your memory here. Hearing this, Hana cast a cold glare up at her father. Alright, I can remember, or at least I can try. Toyama folded his arms and hummed to himself, his gaze turned inward. So, I feel like it was a really common name. Sato? Chiaki chirped. Yamada. Was it either of those? They're pretty common names. Toyama shook his head. Minorikawa offered a guess of his own. Tanaka? No, not that. It was something else. Just then, the television inside the cafe switched over to a news report on Shibuya explosion. The remains of the individual were discovered in the minivan itself, who has since been identified as pharmaceutical company executive Mamoru Tanaka. Mamoru Tanaka. Toyama turned around to look at the TV. An image of the victim's face appeared on the screen. Blah! The publisher blurted, nearly falling out of his seat. That's it! That was him, right there! Mamoru Tanaka! That's what I said! Tanaka! Toyama pointed excitedly at him. That's who Kenji Osawa's wife was dating before they got married! Mamoru Tanaka! Minorikawa felt himself getting goosebumps. The victim of the terrorist bombing in Shibuya was also linked to the researcher who was key to a terrorist viral scare. His reporter's hunch was now a certainty. Right now, Shibuya was at the center of some massive conspiracy. This went far beyond even a major scoop. Mr. Toyama, we need to make sure that next month's issue hits shelves. Minorikawa called up Kenji Osawa to let him know the results of his little investigation. The man didn't seem terribly surprised. Probably he'd had his suspicions all along. Osawa told him that there was something he needed to do before he was ready to give details on the big scoop, but that he would call back later. In the meantime, Minorikawa knew he'd have his hands full getting the current issue of the gossip wrapped up for the 7 o'clock deadline. He slapped his hands down on the table. All right, emergency editing meeting right here, he announced. We need to get a lead in on the Shibuya terrorist bombing into the next issue. The article about the twins winning the beauty contest can be dropped for that. We'll use the info from Kenji Osawa as the basis for our big scoop in the issue after that. Mr. Toyama, any problems with that? No, that should be fine. But what about the remaining pages for next month's issue? Minorikawa opened the file on his computer. The layout built in the DTP came up on the monitor. The report on the burning hammer sales demo, the surveillance camera opinion piece, the interview with Ori. Those 3 were finished. The copy already incorporated into the layout. Once Chiaki's street interview piece was loaded in, that one could be checked off as well. Chiaki, how's your copy coming along? I'm sorry, I just need a little bit longer. Writing seemed to still be giving her a fair bit of trouble. The article on SOS was still just a placeholder in the layout. Minorikawa hadn't even gotten any material for that, putting it even further behind than Chiaki's street interviews. Still, he'd at least learned where Shibuya's legendary street gang made their hangout. He'd just have to take the risk of dropping in on them unannounced to ambush them with some interview questions. And then there was the lead-in for Shibuya bombing. It wasn't even the layout yet. That wasn't even in the layout yet. That was a completely blank slate. Against all odds, they were going to need to put that article together from nothing with just an hour and change. It was an impossible amount of work for just him and Chiaki to do. Well. How are things coming along? Katayama rose and came closer, trying to peer at the monitor. Minorikawa hurried to cover the screen. Don't look! If the printer rep saw the blank pages, he might decide to stop waiting. Would you mind telling me roughly what percent of the total you have completed thus far? What percent? Come off it, man! We're at 100%! If you're 100% done, that implies you're all finished. Could I please have the data then? No, I'm saying our willpower is at 100%. I'm not even going to pretend I understand what you mean by that. Shaking his head, Katayama sat back down in his chair. Minorikawa, Toyama asked, his expression new. So I know I asked before, but why is someone from the printer here again? Katayama promptly chimed in. The long and short of it is that your proofing deadline has changed to 7 o'clock, he said. What? But that's impossible! Who's doing the lead-in for the Shibuya bombing? Toyama eyed Minorikawa and then Chiaki. Both stared back non-committedly. then it really is impossible. Never meet the deadline. We don't have enough people. No, we do have enough. Minorikawa thrust out his finger. Mr. Toyama, you're going to write that one and handle the layout. What? Evan Publishing is your company. Won't you step up in order to protect it? Toyama hung his head. No. Even if I headed to the scene right now, I'm sure the other outlets have already gotten their coverage. I wouldn't be able to find anything to write about. What? And so you're just gonna give up? A moment later, Toyama was on the floor, Minorikawa glaring down at him. You've always said you wanted to tell the world about the things the mass media can't or won't write about. So what the hell difference does it make that they've already gotten the sound bits thereafter? Minorikawa's voice was raw with emotion. Don't you dare give up! Not that easily! Get your ass out there! Find something that only you can write about! Kawa. Toyama began to object, then he glanced over at Hana. Imploring look in her eyes as well. Get what you're saying, Toyama grumbled. But still, you're expecting a lot. But then, despite his words, he flashed a broad grin. Yeah, Minorikawa let out a quiet chuckle. And it's got you all fired up. Yeah, I'm fired up all right. Toyama's face shone with a resolve Minorikawa hadn't seen in a long time. There we go. That's the Toyama I know. You know, really sorry. Now I see the huge burden I put on you. But damn it, it's gonna be alright. Getting to his feet, Toyama took his daughter by the hand and strode boldly out of the cafe, looking like a changed man. Minorikawa watched them go, glad the dithering was over. Even if Toyama were still in his prime, he'd be cutting it close to do that article in an hour. But he would pull through somehow. When it came to taking care of Hana, man would rise to the occasion again and again. Father and daughter disappeared into the crowd, hand in hand. Minorikawa shook himself out of his reverie. All right, he cried. Despite the clear blue sky, an unexpected gust of wind blew across his cheek. Come on, guys. We gotta get going, too. Things might look grim, but he wasn't going to give up until the bitter end. It was time to head to the SOS hangout. Inferno. The three ran along long and hard after leaving the cafe. If the proofing deadline was 7 o'clock, then they needed to finish up with SOS by 6:30 at the latest. The gang's hideout was in Harajuku. Running all the way there on foot was going to eat into too much of their time. But traffic was at a near standstill for some reason, and there wasn't a taxi in sight. How long do you plan on running like this? Katayama called out, panting. Just take a look at the road! With this traffic, there's no point in hailing a cab. Even Minorikawa was feeling the time pressure now. We're just gonna have to keep running until the road clears. What? Katayama wailed. Stop your whining! Just keep quiet and stick with me! He'd finally gotten Toyama to find his willpower again. Next month's issue would come out on time, and no way was some printer guy going to mess that up now. But the traffic showed no sign of abating. Catching a cab wasn't going to be an option. Fighting an even longer echo of despair, Minorikawa kept his desperate headlong rush. To rush into a situation recklessly or heedlessly, not quite the same as being a daredevil. Still, there were limits to how far the mind could push the body before exhaustion set in. Eek! Ow! As they were running across a pedestrian overpass, Chiaki slipped and took a nasty fall. He skinned her knee hard enough to draw blood. Hey, you! Minorikawa snapped at Katayama. Don't just stand there! Help the poor girl already! Katayama scurried over to Chiaki. I'm I'm sorry, Mr. Mino. Chiaki's voice bubbled with suppressed tears. Maybe it was cruel to make her run with her computer all the way to Harajuku, but the copy for her interview still needed to be looked over. They couldn't just leave her here. Minorikawa hesitated, undecided. Even on a full run, they wouldn't make it in time, and with the traffic the way it was, there was nothing they could do. You now have... Katayama consulted his pocket watch. Exactly 1 hour remaining. Damn it! Minorikawa raged. What do we do? Relentlessly, the clock ticked on. To be continued. Alrighty. Well, those two are stuck. That doesn't lead anywhere. Yeah, so it's time for Osawa to save Maria. The rain won't let up. Sound of growing louder and louder inside my head. It is the sound of regret, spattering against my heart. My emotions surge like a terrible storm within me. I never wished for this. Never expected my heart to be dragged so far beyond my control. We can't save Maria. We can't save Maria. We can't save Maria. The words stormed through Osawa's mind in a relentless cacophony. He'd called up images of the bodies from the human testing trials on his computer monitor. He couldn't help but imagine his daughter in the same gruesome state. In just a few more hours, Maria would begin hemorrhaging blood and die just like the people in those pictures had. We can't save Maria. We can't save Maria. We can't save Maria. He couldn't shake the words or the reality from his mind. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Osawa began pounding his fist fiercely on the desktop. Sir, what are you doing? Hajiwara tried to intervene, but he kept on pounding away. When he finally ceased, the pain of the repeated impacts lingered in his hands. My research was never about any sincere desire to help people. And now I'm paying the price for that. The one time it finally matters, I can't even save my own daughter. Mr. Osawa. Kajiwara set a hand on his shoulder. You can always blame yourself later. But for now, think again, good and hard. Is there really no other way to save Maria? Nothing else we could try? Osawa shook his head. The only means we had left was using Tanaka's password to unlock the doors. And now, Tanaka is dead. There's no other way. Is there a possibility that Mr. Tanaka told someone else his password? This was something Osawa hadn't considered. Was there anyone Tanaka might have shared his password with? Only one person came to mind. Oh, yes. There may be someone. You're referring to I, sir? Kajiwara cast his eyes down. You figured that out, then? Yes. Factoring the commotion over that listening device. A necktie clip isn't typically the sort of present one gives to one's husband's coworker. And yet, although some might consider it somewhat, inappropriate, Mr. Tanaka was wearing it as if it were a matter of course. Which, implies something about their relationship? Kajiwara's voice trailed off. He coughed apologetically and tried again. I realize it's an awkward situation, sir, but please check with your wife. Even if I does happen to know the password, that does us no good if Maria gets quarantined someplace we can't reach her. I understand, Mr. Osawa. I'll bring Maria to you then. I'll do everything in my power to make that happen. The detective then produced a bunch of bananas from his pocket. These are all left over. You're more than welcome to them, sir. Despite his gentle smile, the rest of his face was firm with resolve. You said you didn't care whether other people understood you. Didn't you, Mr. Osawa? Osawa nodded guardedly. At the risk of being presumptuous, sir, I understand you, Kajiwara said. I used to be quite the workaholic myself. You're just like me, innocent and awkward. On another occasion, Kajiwara was shocked to run into a man who looked just like him. The fellow was a stylist at a hair salon Kajiwara visits on occasion. He let out a gasp of surprise of his own upon seeing the detective. Kajiwara felt a particular connection and was expecting to go to the salon regularly, but then the stylist asked what he did for a living, and Kajiwara answered honestly that he was a detective. The other man's face went pale, and he bolted out of the building. Kajiwara never saw the man again after that. Calling yourself innocent, huh? How modest of you. Osawa let out a sardonic chuckle, and after a moment Kajiwara joined in. The next time I see you, Mr. Osawa, I'll have Maria with me. The detective gave a slight bow, then left the study, a look of determination on his face. Osawa watched him go with admiration. No matter what trouble arose, the man always looked for something he could do. He really was a fellow who knew how to hang tough. Compared to that, I'm just... Osawa couldn't even articulate his own self-disgust. Asking Ai about the password would also mean inquiring into her relationship with Tanaka. The prospect was daunting. Venturing into the emotional territory of another person was his weakest suit. He left his study. Somehow find himself making his way to Maria's room, not Ai's. He realized that he hadn't been into his daughter's room since a certain rainy day years before. Now he stepped quietly inside and saw Maria's world laid out before him. A small photo was set atop her neat and tidy desk. It was a close-up of someone's hands doing a cat's cradle. Whose hands were they? The skin tone they didn't appear to be Maria's. Several more photographs were pinned to a corkboard that hung on the wall. There were snapshots of people and townscapes from the Middle East. One glanced at them, and Osawa felt like he was back there for a moment. The images weren't necessarily aesthetically pleasing, but they all looked like they'd been taken by a professional. When he spotted the last photo on the corkboard, however, he was certain that Maria had taken them all. The last picture was of Osawa himself. He was facing the camera, holding some luggage and flashing an awkward smile. It was a comical, affectionate image. He'd never known that photography was one of his daughter's hobbies. No, this went beyond a mere hobby. Did she perhaps aspire to be a professional photographer one day? She certainly had the aptitude for it from the look of things. Maria, a photographer. As he mulled the idea over, Osawa felt his chest tighten. Right now, it looked like Maria's hopes and dreams were about to be snuffed out. Her future consisted of bleeding to death a few short hours from now. Osawa stared vacantly out the window. The view from Maria's room remained unchanged from so long ago. Again, that rainy day crept back into his mind, as vivid as the present. On that day, Osawa was dealing with some pressing business from work. He'd enscored himself in his study, wrestling with some paperwork when Hitomi barged in, looking distraught. "Maria's gone!" Sensing that Hitomi was legitimately alarmed, Osawa hurried to Maria's room. He found a letter she'd left atop her writing desk. "Dad, you only care about Hitomi. You're always working and never do anything with me, so I'm running away." A few hours earlier, he'd canceled their weekend trip to the amusement park. He just wasn't going to be able to get his work done in time. And Hitomi had resigned herself readily enough, but Maria just couldn't accept it. She'd been looking forward to it for so long, she railed at him. How many times now had he broken one of his promises to her? Hitomi understands why we can't go, so why can't you do the same? Cold rebuke had ended her complaining, but it was clear she still didn't accept the situation. Now, Hitomi helped him look around, but they found nothing missing from Maria's room. Despite her assertion that she was running away then, it seemed like there was no point in being overly concerned. Maybe she's at the park she always goes to. Hitomi looked worried. The park was roughly a 25-minute walk from the house. It would only take about an hour for Osawa to go get her and bring her home, but an hour was more than he could afford to spare right now. Dad? I think she's waiting for you to go after her. Osawa didn't need Hitomi to tell him that. He knew it well enough. That was what galled him so much about the situation. Why did she have to pull something like this precisely when his work was at its busiest? He'd done everything he could as a father since his wife had passed away. But couldn't his daughter see that? Why couldn't his daughter see that? It's all right. Your sister will come back. The rain was coming down pretty hard outside the window. Do you think she brought an umbrella? Hitomi asked anxiously. I don't know, but with the rain like this, she'll come back home soon enough. He spoke the words for himself as much as Hitomi. Then he headed back to his study and got back to work. But several hours went by, and still Maria did not return. Rain had gotten even more intense, to the point where Osawa could hear it in his study. He was so concerned about his missing girl that he couldn't focus on his work, but he stubbornly refused to give in and go search for her. Several more hours passed. At last, Maria appeared at the front door, soaking wet. Osawa met her silently in the entryway. Wet strands of hair clung to the girl's forehead as she looked up at her father with a bitter glare. You don't care what happens to me, do you? Immediately, Osawa smacked her across the cheek with the flat of his hand. It was the first time in his life he'd ever struck anyone. He hadn't known such a violent impulse could exist inside him. Maria stood there, her hand pressed to her cheek. Tears welled up in her eyes. She began to tremble. On her lip was a small bead of blood. A flood of guilt and regret rose up inside Osawa as if he just shattered some intricate piece of glasswork. How could I do such a thing? He clenched his shameful hand into a fist, and in that moment he was afraid of Maria. Afraid that his daughter could bring such raw emotions out of him and make him do something so thoughtless. But even more, he was afraid of how stunted he was as a human being. Was someone like him really fit to be a parent? What kind of future could Maria and Hitomi hope for with a father like him? That was why he'd married Ai, as Makino had proposed. Having a mother, he decided, would help keep his family together despite their sad excuse for a father. But in doing so, Osawa had dug a psychological ditch between himself and his daughters. A deep ditch, so that he could keep his daughters from hurt. So that he wouldn't hurt himself. Okay. Now Osawa was staring across that ditch, wondering if it was too wide to leap. He thought back to his earlier exchange with Kajiwara. If you get angry, you show it. If you get sad, you show it. It's human nature to let other people know how we're feeling, after all. But what if doing that hurts the other person? That's when you apologize, sir. Yes, I was right. He needed to apologize to Maria for what he'd done that day. It still wasn't too late. It's never too late. When it comes to family, there's no such thing as game over. He recalled Pretty Honey's words. He needed to apologize to Maria, and so he worked to ask Ai for that password. Osawa was going to have to face his wife. Here we go. Osawa's phone rang and Minorikawa's phone number popped up on the LCD display. The reporter must have finished looking into the matter Osawa had asked about. Mr. Osawa? Sorry to keep you waiting. How did it go? Well, I looked in the background of that story you asked about, and I learned who it was your wife was dating. Who was it? Osawa asked immediately. There was a brief pause. Mamoru Tanaka. I see. Finally, he had proof positive of a relationship between Ai and Tanaka. Now, more than ever, it was no time to waver. No matter how painful the reality was, it was also true that they hadn't been dating. There would probably be no way of saving Maria. That if they hadn't been dating, there was no possible way of saving... There would probably be no way of saving Maria. Fuck, I can't speak! I'm falling apart! So, Minorikawa said, what was this big thing about disrupting the power balance of the world all about? There's something I need to take care of on my end first. Once I'm finished, I'll tell you everything. Yeah, that's fine. Things are pretty hectic on my end right now anyway. Osawa had expected Minorikawa to put up more of a fight. He'd figured a reporter for 4-star general gossip would be a bit more persistent. Oh, by the way, there was one thing I wanted to tell you, Mr. Osawa. Osawa could practically sense the finger pointing his way from the other end of the line. Don't be too angry with your wife. All too often in this world, people let their anger get in the way of solving their problems. You may have a point. Osawa let out a wry chuckle. Alright then. I'll call you back later. Osawa found Ai standing by herself in the yard. She kept her back to him as he approached. May I have a moment? He asked quietly. What? Still, she didn't bother to turn around. There's something important I need to talk to you about. I'm not in the mood right now. Please, I realize you're upset about Tanaka's death, but... At the mention of Tanaka's name, I slowly shook her head. Don't. Just tell me what you want. Hurry up and get to the point. Osawa tried to move closer to her, but she pointedly kept her distance. This was no time to mince words. Did Tanaka give you his password? His password? For the electronic lock on the lab. I need it in order to get the antiviral out. I turned to face him at last. To get it out? What are you thinking? That belongs to the company. I just need one dose. To save Maria. Please, if you know, please tell me. I don't know it. Ai's voice was barely a whisper. Osawa looked his wife right in the eye. You're telling the truth. I am. I see. Then, do you have any idea what number he might have used for a password? Ai shook her head silently, then turned her back to her husband once more. Even if I did know, she said, I wouldn't tell you. Why not? Don't you get it? Ai's words came out as a strangled rasp. Do you even know why I'm with you? She snapped. Really have no idea how much you're worth, do you? The value of one woman's life versus the potential profits your research would bring in. There's no comparing the two. If it meant that Okoshi Pharmaceutical could monopolize your talents, then what did it even matter what I wanted for myself? There was something akin to desperation in Ai's words. And so you sent me those threatening emails too. What? I looked at him in shock. He knew he'd guessed correctly. You would go that far, just to keep me tied to your father's business? That's right. I would. I bit down on her lip, hard. But what would you even know about how I feel? I'm sorry. Don't apologize. I'm not the victim here. You say that, but isn't it because of me that you and Tanaka weren't able to stay together? I began to tremble. Her secret was out. When did you figure it out? She asked. Earlier today. That tie clip. Right. Not the sort of gift one gives to a husband's coworker, is it? Ai's smile was bitter with self-deprecation. Osawa couldn't help pity her. Even Tanaka must have suspected that she placed the company's profit above all else, if she'd go to such lengths to protect it. It was like she'd given up her entire life just for that. Please, don't mess my life up any more than you already have. Ai's words were only a faint murmur, but Osawa felt the rejection they carried with agonizing clarity. Tanaka hadn't give Ai his password. Osawa's last chance had gone up in smoke. He let out a long, shaky breath, shut his eyes tight. Was it true? Was there nothing more he could do? Keep out? Hang on. There's gotta be some way of getting those keep outs out of the way. Achi walked at an easy pace, wanting to delay the end of their time together just a little longer. Once they reached his home, this kidnapping case would be all over, because his own father, Daisuke, would be arrested as the culprit. Kidnapping for ransom carries a potential life sentence, with a definite term of imprisonment of no less than 3 years. Bringing Daisuke down would be easy. Achi wasn't worried about that part at all. If he didn't hold back, there was a good chance he'd wind up hurting his father. Holding back. Getting hurt. Long ago rose in Achi's mind. Oh, this just straight up. Yeah, and then we get kept out again. Okay, well, what about Stanley's phone call? Who were you talking to now? Stanley's reply was clipped. That utter idiot I was telling you about earlier. With that, Stanley proceeded to wrap up his phone call. Guess I'm not going to get much out of this guy, Achi thought. By bringing Hitomi in, do you mean you're gonna arrest her? Achi couldn't think of any other reason to take her to the precinct. I'm just gonna move her someplace safe. With that, Stanley proceeded to wrap up his phone call. Guess I'm not gonna get much out of this guy. Move her someplace safe, huh? Was he actually serious, or just being evasive? Achi couldn't really tell. If they did try to arrest Hitomi, though, Achi intended to stop them, one way or another. He needed to protect her, all the way to the end. Inwardly, he reaffirmed the vow he'd made earlier, to keep her safe whatever it took. I was really hoping the longer conversation would mean progress. But no. Fucking no. Where does the GPS lead? No, it's not that. Kano scanned the area. Just that Endo Electronics is right up ahead. What? Kano stopped abruptly. What are you suggesting? The twins are heading for the same location? That's my guess. What does that mean? But I can't. It's blocked. Here's another jump point. Oh. Maybe the name? What names were listed? Endo. Yeah! That's so fucking stupid. No! Oh, that's not right. You could just keep fucking guessing. Nakamura! No, but I feel like we're on the right track. Right, now it should be the same. Yep. Alrighty. Endo. Let's fucking go. That's so dumb. I had to get it wrong. The workroom door slowly eased open. Hey! Achi was too shocked for words. The girl who entered looked just like Hitomi. Maria! Hitomi! Achi blinked in bewilderment. It was almost as if Hitomi were standing in front of a mirror. The two girls looked so similar. Maria, thank goodness you're all right. So sorry I had you worried. Maria was safe, Achi realized. At least, he had managed to fulfill his duty. How did you manage to get out of the storeroom? Daisuke had gone pale. Tell me, Maria said sharply. Who was it who came up with this kidnapping plan? Suddenly, Daisuke shoved Maria aside and lunged for Hitomi. Stanley moved to stop him, but before he could intervene, the older man had a hold on Hitomi, pressing something that looked like a flashlight up against her neck. Dad! Achi started toward him. Stanley held his hand. Don't move! That's a stun gun. A piece of self-defense equipment for repelling would-be attackers with an electric shock. There are several types, including baton-type stun prods and guns that fire needles attached to flexible wires. The latter type, especially, is frequently referred to in the U.S. as a taser or taser gun, due to popular models produced by Taser International, now Axon. Stun guns are used not only by civilians but also by law enforcement and military personnel for non-lethal application. If he zaps her in the neck, it could kill her. You know your stuff, Daisuke said. You deal in American electronics? No, I do this for a living. Stanley drew his gun in an instant, taking aim at Daisuke's forehead. Wait, hold on! Achi interposed himself between Stanley and his father. Dad, let Hitomi go! You need to stop this nonsense! Achi walked slowly towards his father, a pleading look in his eyes. Nonsense? Which one of us is talking nonsense here? You don't know what's going on. If you knew everything, then you'd be helping me. What do you mean, everything? This girl's heart, we could save Suzune. Dad, who was it exactly that told you that? Daisuke did not reply. I asked you a question. Who was it that put this crazy idea into your head? A foreign organ trafficker I met at the hospital, Daisuke. In Japan, a medical professional known as a transplant coordinator handles the liaison between the donor and the recipient parties. But there are many cases of illegal or borderline illegal activity carried out by third-party organ brokers. There are countries where organ transplants are openly performed for monetary gain, and no shortage of specialists willing to do the job. These questionable markets include suppliers who source viable organs and tissue for transplant from cadavers. Stanley let out a snort. A likely story. It's true. I was suspicious at first myself, Daisuke said stubbornly. But I couldn't just sit around and wait for Suzune to die. And after talking to him about her rare blood type and all the difficulties of performing a transplant, he promised he'd do everything in his power. Daisuke's hands were trembling, tears welling up in his vacant, bloodshot eyes. Then a while later, got back in touch and told me he'd found a potential match. Someone with the same blood type as Suzune and roughly the same age. But then he told me that the girl was still alive. And so what was the point? Her heart might be a match for Suzune, but it didn't matter if we couldn't get our hands on it. I said that, but then the man told me. Told you what? Achi bit his lip. He told me to abduct her and turn her over to him. After that, he'd find a way to make it all work. At last, Daisuke had confessed. Now Achi had to try to come to grips with the truth he had just heard. I had to do something, his father continued vehemently. I had to abduct this girl and see things through. I just couldn't take it. Katone had already been taken from me. Thought of losing Suzune, too. I had to make sure I didn't fail. So it was this organ trafficker who came up with the kidnapping scheme then, Stanley said. He kept his gun aimed at his target. Daisuke nodded. Describe him for me. He was tall, had black hair, spoke fluent Japanese. Stanley raised an eyebrow at that. Achi wondered if he had some idea who it might be. And taking Maria Osawa hostage in order to lure out Hitomi, that was his idea as well. Yeah, yes, that's right. I allowed his computer to access my surveillance camera system as well. Oh, wait, I'm getting confused. And taking Maria Osawa hostage in order to lure out Hitomi, that was his idea as well? Yeah, yes, that's right. I allowed his computer to access my surveillance camera system as well. And then, this morning, I got a call from the hospital saying Suzune's condition was critical. I couldn't wait any longer. I had helped my girl right away. And then... Daisuke cut him off. Cut himself off, reaffirming his grip on his stun gun. I was looking at the surveillance monitor and I saw a detective I happened to know. He was right next to this girl here. And so I decided to ask him. I knew if I did, he wouldn't refuse. He could never refuse a request from me. That was the man with the cane, Achi asked. His voice was low and hoarse. Yes, I was even giving him directions while I followed you on the monitors. Dad, need to let go of Hitomi now. There's no point to this. Achi took another step closer to his father. There is a point! If I kill this girl here and now, your sister can get the surgery she needs! Even Achi knew that things couldn't possibly work out that way. His father had grown so desperate to help Suzune that he lost all sense of judgment. Why, Achi? Why won't you help me? Don't you want to save Suzune? Daisuke made a pathetic sight, and yet his desperation to save his child was so palpable it was heartrending. It was heartrending. Achi thought back to that time he'd laid his father out when sparring. No matter how pathetic he may have looked, Achi had always felt that sense of parental love from him. "You're not going to be able to talk him down," Stanley murmured. Achi shook his head. "Stanley," he said, "lower your gun." Tears were welling up in his eyes. "Please, lower your gun." Hearing the determination in Achi's voice, Stanley quietly complied. Achi stepped up to Daisuke, getting a firm grip on his father's slender shoulder. "Dad, of course I want to help Suzune." "Then why are you trying to stop me?" "Dad, do you think this is what she'd want you to do?" Daisuke's face fell. "Did Suzune ask for this, Dad? Did she tell you to take someone else's heart so that she could live longer? Did she, Dad?" Suddenly, the fight seemed to ebb from Daisuke's body. The stun gun hung limply in his hand. "If Suzune asked me to go and get someone's heart for her, I wouldn't object. I'd help her just like she wanted. I wouldn't let you bear these crimes by yourself. But that's not what this is it? Suzune would never ask us to do something like this, would she?" By now, tears were streaming down Achi's cheeks. He knew that his father thought about Suzune more than he thought of anyone else. And so, he should know full well that she would never want this. "Suzune's not like me. She's smarter, she's kind, and she'd never be happy about taking someone else's heart. Even if it saved her life, I'm sure she'd never accept that. She wouldn't be able to live with it, knowing something so horrible had happened to someone else for her sake. Isn't that the Suzune we know?" Daisuke's cheeks were smeared with tears now as well. "But then we're not going to be able to help her." The sound of father and son weeping echoed through the workroom. "Maybe so. Maybe we won't. But that's better than the misery and suffering she'd have to live with." Daisuke slumped to his knees on the floor, collapsing like a crumbled mound of sand. Hitomi, freed from his grip, stood motionless. There were tears in her eyes, too. "You're such an idiot, Dad. Such a complete, utter idiot." Sobbing, Achi embraced his father. There was a sudden thud from near the door. Everyone turned to look. Maria had crumbled to the floor, and a newcomer had appeared. At some point, Kanon had suddenly entered the room. Now she cradled Maria in her arms. Standing in the doorway was a man Achi didn't recognize, his face pale. "Stay back! Stay back!" Kanon shouted at Achi when he tried to approach. It looked like Maria had fallen unconscious. Achi's heart was racing in his chest. An eerie silence fell over the room. For several seconds, no one said a word, their eyes all fixed on Maria. Finally, Kanon looked up, her face ashen. "It's starting." An unfamiliar man. Let's fucking go. Alrighty. After the young man's desperate pleading, the other fellow, apparently his father, finally gave in. He released his hold on Hitomi. The tension in the room was replaced by a solemn air of gravitas. Seeing father and son weeping as they spoke made Kano think up to his conversation with Tateno before the stakeout. What was it in people that drove them to do such horrible things? Sometimes it was the desire to save the ones they loved. Even such a heartfelt human emotion could drive someone to wrongdoing. Why? Why did people have to be like that? A sudden thud snapped Kano out of his musing. An instant later, Kanon hurried past him into the workroom. Maria had collapsed on the floor, and now Kanon was beside her. In a panic, Kanon rushed into the workroom as well. "Stay back!" Kanon shouted as the others tried to huddle around the fallen girl. "Please don't be what I think this is." Had the virus gone symptomatic? 2 hours ago, Stanley had told Kano that Maria was infected. He'd also said that her symptoms wouldn't develop for another 4 hours. Shouldn't they still have 2 more hours to go? Maria looked like she was dead, her eyes closed, her body motionless. Hitomi tried to approach despite Kanon's warnings. "Maria?" she cried. "Maria, what's wrong?" Kano held his arms wide to hold her back. "Your sister has been infected with the Uwa virus." The Uwa virus? Hitomi's face went pale. "Hey," Kano said to Kanon. "Should you really be that close? She's developed symptoms." But Kanon didn't move aside. She calmly rested her hand on the other girl's forehead. "There's no fever," she said. "And there's no blood coming from her ears, no lymph node swelling. I'll be alright. She hasn't gone symptomatic yet." In that case, why did she collapse?" Hitomi asked. "I'm not sure yet. Whatever the case, if we don't get her that antiviral, she's done for." Then we have to get her to the lab right away," Hitomi said, trembling with anxiety. No, that's not an option. Kano's tone was grave. "You may already be aware, Miss Osawa, but without a password we can't access the antiviral storage." "But when I went there, my father and Mr. Tanaka..." "Mamoru Tanaka is dead. Murdered." "What?" She stared at him uncomprehendingly. No, that can't be true." "He was a member of a crime syndicate. It's possible they killed him in order to silence him." "So then, there's no way to save my sister?" There was a hollow look in Hitomi's eyes. "No, I won't accept that! Why? Why can't we help her?" But no one had an answer. Kano gritted his teeth and his head. Why did it have to come this far, but there was nothing he could do, and he hated himself for it. "I'll go to the laboratory." It was Kanon. "Electronic lockbreaking is my specialty." "Wait," the young man, Achi, spoke up suddenly. "So you're a martial arts badass, but your specialty is lockbreaking?" He looked positively dumbstruck. Kanon ignored him, thinking out loud. Brute force. "A cryptanalysis technique that involves test input of all theoretically possible patterns. If time were unlimited, this would be the most reliable means of decipherment. However, in practice, the process takes massive amounts of time and computational power, and can be defeated by systems that prohibit access after a limited number of failed input attempts." Side channel. Rather than trying to decipher the password itself, this method involves analyzing information from the device, such as processing time, power consumption, and electromagnetic leaks, and using these details to exploit the system. Isolating the run state of devices is a crucial element of countering side-channel attacks. Shortcut. A cryptanalysis method that uses mathematical algorithms to carry out efficient bulk calculations against a block cipher that makes use of a shared key for encryption and decryption. Even when such calculations are theoretically possible, however, in practice the process requires large amounts of time and the block cipher is seldom at real risk. Given the situation, I think I have to go with side channel. Side channel? Stanley asked. Where's your equipment? One of the lab PCs will suffice. I can connect to a special server from the net. I don't really understand the stuff you're talking about, Achi said, but I'll trust you to handle this. I mean, you did risk your life to save Hitomi from that minivan explosion and all. Kanon nodded. I have to warn you in advance, though. Cryptanalysts can take hours and still yield no results. I can't guarantee I'll be able to get the doors unlocked before Maria develops symptoms. I understand, Hitomi said. Achi nodded, too. No one present had any objections. All of a sudden, there was a curious sound from somewhere in the room. What's that? Kano asked. What's making that noise? He looked around the workroom. That's my computer. Daisuke hurried to his desktop. The bank of monitors, which had been displaying surveillance camera footage from around Shibuya, had all gone black. What the hell? What's going on, Dad? Achi joined his father, staring at the computer screens. It's all gone. The camera footage, it has been deleted. Daisuke blinked in disbelief. Now then, seems our main cast has all been assembled. A man's voice, distorted by a voice modulator, suddenly emerged from the computer speakers. Now then, it seems our... I'm not gonna... A moment later, the monitors all began to display a view of the inside of the workroom. Dad, what the hell is this? Someone's broken through our firewall. A security system for preventing unauthorized intrusion into a computer network. The term stems from a metaphorical reapplication of the concept of a wall meant to inhibit the spread of fire or other destructive forces. They've hijacked the surveillance camera system. Color drained from Daisuke's face as he looked at the screens. Where are they filming us from? Kano asked, scanning the inside of the room. He used the image on the monitor to guess where the camera might be located. Over here? The lens of a camera sat atop the computer. The monitor glimmered like an eye. It was a miniature camera, used for web conferences and like. Now that Maria and Hitomi are both there, you have probably surmised the situation at hand. So I offer a proposal. A laboratory password in exchange for Hitomi's blood. Realizing now that it was Alphard's voice they were hearing, everyone in the room froze. At 7 o'clock, roughly 1 hour from now. See that Hitomi Osawa is waiting at the Scramble section outside Shibuya Station, just like this morning. Unless, of course, you're feeling particularly confident. You do have Kanon with you. Perhaps you'd care to take a gamble on her lock-breaking skills instead. Kanon clucked her tongue in frustration. Alphard had known exactly what the plan was. Of course, if Kanon isn't able to get the door open in time, what will you do then? Maria is sure to die, yes. That's not all. If you don't agree to my offer, I have the means of creating another Maria, and a third. These infectees will spread the virus through Tokyo. The death toll will likely number in the hundreds of thousands. It is difficult to predict the scope of infection in the event of a bioterrorist attack employing a highly infectious viral agent in a city with a large and mobile population. In a worst-case scenario, some researchers estimate as many as several million infected in a matter of days. So do think carefully before you decide. Alphard's voice was chillingly matter-of-fact. I will appear at the rendezvous in person. After all, it wouldn't do for the star of the show to miss the final curtain. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you then. Silence fell. Then the images on the computer monitor returned to normal. The surveillance camera footage came back online as well. Daisuke promptly yanked out his Ethernet cable and slammed his fist on the keyboard. Damn it! There was a hole in the firewall! I'll have to redo my security from the ground up. Calm, Kanon said calmly. We can't win this if our intel keeps getting leaked. Stanley pursed his lips in consternation. What do we do? Kano asked him. Do we give in to his demands? I mean, do we really expect that he's going to blithely show up like that? practically begging for us to come and catch him. There had to be some deeper plan at work. If it means saving my sister, I'll do it. Hitomi was resolute. No, Stanley said, you can't. What? Why not? Because if you do, you'll be killed. What? Hitomi's voice caught in her throat. With the antiviral still present in your body a week after the fact, you're too much of a liability for Alphard just to let go. He's right. Don't do it, Achi exclaimed. Hitomi, you can't go. Even still, I want to do it. Hitomi stared defiantly at Stanley. Still want to go even knowing that you'll be killed? I can't just sit here and hope that Kanon is able to pull this off, she said. I want to do something for my sister. I want to save her. She peered down at Maria, sprawled on the floor. She'd object to me going, I'm sure of that. But I want to do what I can. To do things my way. No one tried to contradict her this time. She's willing to take the risk, and there are things the rest of you can do too. She's willing to take the risk, and there are things the rest of you can do too. It was Kanon again. Let's hear it, Kano replied. He squared his shoulders. He was of the same mind as Hitomi. He couldn't just do nothing and leave it all to Kanon. After everything he'd been through, he wanted to stick with this case until the very end. Apprehend Alphard at the rendezvous and demand the password from him. Kanon offered the suggestion as if it were a simple task. That lets you get what you want without putting Hitomi in danger. Kano let out a sigh. Hold on, he said. Even if we do arrest him, how are we going to get him to cough up the password? We don't have time to drag him off to an interrogation room. Besides, he doesn't strike me as the sort to offer a confession that easily. There are ways, Kanon said. Once Alphard has made contact with Hitomi, call my cell phone. Hitomi tilted her head. Call you? I have plenty of information Alphard might want to bargain for. I can negotiate with him directly. Kano considered Kanon's proposal. I see. So we'll try both options. Attempt to hack the password at the lab, and also try negotiating with Alphard. That gives us two chances. That tiny ray of hope, Hitomi's face brightened some. We'll split into two groups. One for the lab and one for Shibuya... We'll split into two groups. One for the lab and one for Shibuya Station, Kanon said. Let's exchange phone numbers so we can be in touch when the time comes. The group quickly shared contact info as suggested. Hitomi and Kanon called one another's phones to be sure. Hitomi's cheerful ringtone felt out of place, but also somehow soothing, a fragment of normalcy in the midst of the crisis. Well, guess we're all set then, Hitomi said, looking down at the LCD screen. Her expression turned apologetic. I'm sorry, Kanon, for having to keep putting things on you. Hey, Kanon replied. Don't worry about it. Okay. Now I guess I should just call my father. Oh, okay, now I guess I should just call my father. Hitomi called Kenji Osawa on his cell, asking him to let Maria and Kanon into the lab. Kano leaned in to whisper into Kanon's ear. Are you sure you're okay with this? With what? I know that you're after Alphard. Are you sure you want to go to the lab and not... Right now, I want to save Maria. That's all. Her tone was as curt and mechanical as ever, but there was a fierce gleam of determination in her eyes. Maria was clearly someone very special to her. All right, Kano replied. Leave Alphard to me. He thumped himself on the chest. He'd succeed this time, no matter what the odds. Kano could scarcely recall the whirlwind of events that had brought him here. He'd somehow survived a dozen disasters. Even now, a dear friend was in the hospital, at the risk of dying. There were times when he'd been ready to give up. And yet, at the end of it all, here he was. His opponent was an international terrorist. No matter how you looked at it, that wasn't an easy matchup for a mere detective. But I'm going to do it anyway. Rumi, Shizuro, Sasayama, and Detective Tateno. I'm going to take down Alphard and save Maria Osawa's life. Just you watch and see. To be continued. And we have the last jump point back to Kenji Osawa. Tanaka hadn't given Ai his password. Osawa's last chance had gone up in smoke. He let out a long, shaky breath and shut his eyes tight. Was it true? Was there nothing more he could do? Osawa's cell phone rang. When he saw the name on the incoming call display, he nearly shouted out loud. It was Hitomi. Hitomi? Are you alright? Please tell me you're alright. Yeah, I'm fine. But Maria's... Maria? Is Maria there with you? Osawa's heart leaped. Dad, there isn't any time for me to explain everything, so I'll just have to give you the main points. This is so we can save my sister, so just stay calm and listen. Osawa struggled to hold back the 1,000 questions that immediately came boiling into his mind. There's a girl named Kanon who's going to bring Maria to the lab. She's going to try to hack the password in order to get us inside. Wait, hold on! Just what in the world is going on? There are a bunch of people here working to help save Maria. Can you wait for us at the lab, Dad? I'm not sure that electronic lock is something that'll be so easily to... We've got another plan in motion too, and if that goes well, we might be able to learn the password. It was all too much to follow, but Osawa realized he'd have to take Hitomi at her word. It was their only hope of saving Maria. All right, he said. I'll do as you ask. But you said you're trying 2 approaches. You're not going to be in danger, are you? No, I'll be fine. Don't worry about me. Okay. Very well. I'm heading to the laboratory now. You can't. You can't go. The moment Osawa hung up and started for the house, Ai clung to him from behind. If you use the antiviral now, she said, everything will go public. There's no way we can keep the virus or the antiviral under wraps at this point. Osawa tried to pull free, but his wife was stronger than he expected. Besides, if Maria infects other people, the whole world is going to find out in a matter of hours. No, we could just quarantine her. If it's handled correctly, we'll still be able to retain secrecy. Ai's voice was cold as ice. Do you even have any idea what you're saying right now? I do. I know how it sounds. But this is the only thing I can... Her voice trailed off. He could feel the force of her trembling where she held him. Have I really put you through that much of a corner? Osawa slipped from Ai's arms and prostrated himself on the ground in front of him. I'm sorry. I'm truly, truly sorry. Oh, stop this! Get up! If you're really sorry, then don't go to that lab! But Osawa remained silent, his forehead pressed to the dirt. If you use that antiviral without corporate approval, your time with Okoshi is finished. That doesn't matter to me anymore. How can you say that? Virology is the only thing you've ever cared about. I began pummeling his back. Maybe virology is all that I care about. I don't know the first thing about anything else. I never wanted to know. Never even thought to find out. Never bothered to learn what you or my children might think. I'm a failure. As a father and as a husband. How dare you say that only after it's come to this? I struck him again, harder than before. You're right, he gasped out the words between her blows. Maybe this has been too long coming. But it's not too late. I could still start over. Start over? She paused in disbelief. You already turned down that American job. If you use that antiviral now, there won't be any starting over. You'll lose everything. Will I lose you, too? After you've gone and thrown everything else away like this? How could I possibly stay with you? I was sobbing softly now. Osawa wondered what her tears were for. But there was only one thing he did know. She was right. They couldn't be together anymore. He got to his feet and headed back into the house, leaving I behind. He hurried through the back entrance and went into the garage. Climbed into his car, fastened his seatbelt, and took a deep breath. The image of a younger Maria arose in the back of his mind. There she was at that park, getting drenched by the rain, holding back her tears as she waited for her father. Wait for me, Maria. This time, I'm going to come for you. I was wrong. Going to the lab wouldn't mean losing everything. He'd let too many important things slip through his fingers. Now it was time to go take them back. Osawa pulled his car out onto the street and sped toward the laboratory. As if to signal that the long day was drawing to a close, the dazzling sun sank down between the buildings in the distance. End of his story. And I'm sorry, Suzune. The UA is out now. Mr. Mino, answer me! You mean it last, Alphard. You can go ahead and kill me. Oh shit! It's a 2-hour block. Shibuya Scramble. You only have 2 people left. And Achi isn't even fucking available right now. All that I have right now are Kano and Minorikawa. Okay, Achi and Kano are together. Minorikawa has his own story. What the fuck? Achi will probably come into play when I reach the next hour. But it seems like they've combined the 6 o'clock block with the 7 o'clock block. So it's 2 hours. The next time will probably be very long. This is the end. I'm pretty sure this is the fucking end. Holy shit. Tuesday's orders, Chiaki can't move. But that'll have to be for next time. Holy shit. Thank you all for watching, especially if you got this far. Stick around. There's a lot more to come.